Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Level of Service Simplifying and Demonstrating a Key Concept for Asset Management webinar. Hopefully you can all hear and see the screen. We're going to get started here in just about a minute here. We have a lot of attendees joining us, so thank you for joining us today.
All right, I think people have stopped joining for the most part, so I think it's good to get started. Welcome everyone to the Level of Service webinar. I'm Andrea Betlick. I am the Watershed Specialist in the Non-Point Source Management Program in the Watershed Assistance section of the Watershed Management Bureau. I provide technical assistance to project managers and grantees receiving funding through the Section 604B and Section 319 of the Clean Water Act to address stormwater impacts to watersheds throughout the state. I will be providing technical assistance with the webinar today, and I have some housekeeping items to go over before we start. Please remain muted during the presentations. There will be a time at the end of the presentation for questions. You can put your questions in the chat during the presentations, and those will be answered during the Q&A session. Or you can raise your hand during the Q&A session, and we will go through that during that time. This presentation will be recorded and added to the Asset Management webpage. And for anyone that needs drinking water and wastewater operating technical credit hours, you will receive the certification via email after the webinar. It will go to the email that you registered with, and you would have had to say that you wanted the THCs while registering. So if you didn't do that, you will have to contact Sarah Ridyard at the email address that has been on your registration. So please do that if you need to. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. For those that don't know me, I'm Sarah Ridyard, the Sustainability Engineer for the Wastewater Engineering Bureau at the New Hampshire DES. I manage the grant program for asset management projects covering clean water, which includes wastewater and stormwater, with a lot of support from Deb Loisel on stormwater. I also support and manage wastewater planning projects funded by New Hampshire DES through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. I'm always happy to help. If you have any questions about applying to our funding programs or about currently funded projects, please see my contact info on this slide. I'm very glad to be here today to kick off what I hope is an informative first session of our new webinar series. And with that, I want to officially welcome you to our new webinar series, Bite-Sized Asset Management Sustainability for Water Infrastructure webinar series. We have started this as we transition our previously annual in-person asset management workshop to every other year. Please be on the lookout for a save the date email later this year for our 2026 workshop. I know that's a popular event for a lot of you. But in the meantime, we hope that you enjoy our webinar today and continue to join us as we have these. We intend to use the webinar series to dive into topics related to asset management for water infrastructure. So that includes resilience and adaptation, strategic planning, cybersecurity, financial sustainability, and many other elements that are part of New Hampshire's drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems. We would love input from our audience as far as topics that are of interest to you. Please be on the lookout for some follow-up after this webinar and please provide any suggestions. We anticipate holding a few webinars per year on various topics and after the webinars are over, maintaining a library of recordings as the time goes by. For our first webinar today, we will be exploring the topic of level of service for asset management. Before we get going on that topic, we do have some updates from staff at New Hampshire DES that we wanted to share. This webinar series will be a collaboration of different speakers, including staff from wastewater, drinking water, and stormwater at New Hampshire DES, and we will each provide a brief update about our programs at the current time. Please note that if you're watching a recording of this webinar, some of the information may be outdated by the time you see it, and feel free to reach out with specific questions. For our Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program, the Project Priority List, or PPL, for 2025 is now available online, and you will find on there projects being offered funds for infrastructure, planning, asset management, and other categories for wastewater and stormwater. This would be for projects that had submitted a pre-application in the spring of this year, and the next opportunity for funding will be next year in the spring of 2026. I want to also mention that we are continuing to provide support to improving cybersecurity for our drinking water and wastewater systems across the state through a contract with the Overwatch Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization. The support varies for cybersecurity depending on the needs of the system, but can include hardware and software, as well as training for staff. If you have questions or are interested in receiving that no-cost support for your wastewater or drinking water system, please feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in touch. I also want to mention some exciting news for our Clean Water Asset Management Program. Starting next year, we're planning to offer a new kind of support to wastewater and stormwater systems through a contract with an engineering firm. We will be able to offer direct support to communities interested in growing their asset management program for wastewater or stormwater. It will be at no cost to the community and hopefully alleviate some of the administrative burden that comes with individual loans and grants for asset management. Um, Another exciting thing about this is that we plan to offer this support to communities that have received assistance in the past, as well as communities that have never come to us for funding. So it will be a great opportunity. Uh, I wanted to mention it now, but more details will be available later this year. So we don't have any application process details or anything like that right now, but just giving you the heads up to be on the lookout. And we do have a lot of other things going on in our bureau as well, but these are just a few items I wanted to highlight at this time, and feel free to reach out with questions. I will turn it to Katie next for a drinking water update.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning. My name is Katie Curtis, and I work in the Drinking Water Public Water System Sustainability section as the Asset Management Coordinator for Drinking Water Systems. I support the water system sustainability grant projects, including asset management and strategic planning, as well as provide technical assistance for asset management and capacity development.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Detterling. I work with Katie in the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau. I help manage the strategic planning grants and the tank cleaning and inspection grant.
And you can reach out to either of us via our email, dwsustainability@des.nh.gov. Next slide. So I wanted to mention to everybody that we are currently offering public water system sustainability grants for asset management and strategic planning. The application is open now through October 3rd. It's available online through our New Hampshire online form system. It's just one application for both grants. You should be able to search for the water system sustainability grant application. The all grants require a match of 50% of the awarded grant amount, and the grants are open to community water systems serving a population of 150 or greater. Next slide. So I wanted to get into just let you know about the available funding for each of the grant programs. So for asset management, we have two options. One for new programs, which you would be eligible for if you've never come to us for funding before and are starting fresh with asset management. That is a $30,000 grant. And then if you have received funding from us before, you are eligible for up to $20,000 for improvements to your program. We're looking to fund projects that advance asset management within your organization, and not projects where the intent is only to update existing data. So just keep that in mind for a competitive application. We also offer strategic planning grants of up to $30,000. The goal for these grants is to support water systems in developing preliminary engineering or hydrogeological reports to provide the best available data for drinking water infrastructure improvements. We have a guidance document that goes into eligible activities and some of the evaluation criteria for building your application. So that is right on the application webpage. So definitely check that out if you are interested in applying. Next slide.
Good morning. My name is Christina Rambo. I am a resilience and adaptation manager at the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau and the Wastewater Engineering Bureau. And I'm supporting the Water Infrastructure Energy Program, where we conduct energy audits and provide technical assistance. Please reach out to me at wiep@des.nh.gov if you have any questions, or if you would like to have an audit done or repeat an audit and find new measures. And remember to contact your utility before upgrading to discuss possible incentives and implement these measures now. Next slide. I have an exciting announcement. We have 5 fall energy efficiency workshops offered at locations across the state. We're offering this workshop to help you understand energy efficiency, energy costs, how to operate treatment plants more efficiently, understand different funding options, presenting a business case, and then getting your energy projects implemented. So please register now, and the link will be provided in the chat. Thanks, Andrea.
Hi, my name is Jarin Tasnim. I'm the financial analyst of the Wastewater Engineering Bureau at NHDES. So I work with New Hampshire communities and assist them with setting up their wastewater rates using the knowledge from different methods and the modules provided by EPA, AWWA, and more. So what we do is we set up meetings with the communities, and we initially will have a presentation, and we would provide the basic knowledges and then ask for their previous financial statements because we cannot calculate it for them. So we use the previous ones and create a sample rate analysis for them so that they can implement it in their own way. So if you need any help regarding financial analysis or rate setting, contact me in the email address provided in the chat box. We had a workshop last year on rate analysis. You can watch it. It's in our YouTube channel. More resources will be coming soon. And one important thing I wanted to mention is many do not know that rate study can be you can apply for rate study in the CWSRF program. So yeah, so that would be all from me.
Great, thanks everybody. And feel free to look in the chat for some of those links and contact information that we shared. We do want to start our webinar by providing some background to level of service from New Hampshire DES. So I think most of the time when I mention level of service at the start of working with a community on asset management, I get a look similar to this slide. So don't be afraid if this is what you look like when you're thinking about this topic. It's often the first time a water system might be thinking about their infrastructure with an asset management perspective. And the concept can be confusing at first, but I promise we can simplify it. Level of service defines the way in which community leaders, managers, and operators want their system to perform over the long term. When we start thinking about infrastructure assets as investments that the community holds, it makes sense to start thinking about the system as providing a service to the community. So that's really the goal of level of service, is to think about it from that perspective. And it helps to really set your stage to make sure that you're setting those goals appropriately. And we want to make sure that we define it in ways that the community and the stakeholders understand. So the output that's generated for level of service might look something like this. It might be an Excel spreadsheet or a matrix, sometimes we call it, of goals divided into different categories. And I'm kind of showing the large matrix behind and then zooming in on one category, operation and maintenance, on the front. We'll get into some of those goals and more specifics on them in a few minutes, but in general, we want to define the parameters by which we measure success of our system. The goals are going to be different for every community and will be different depending on whether it's wastewater, stormwater, or drinking water. So for example, on this slide, these are drinking water goals, but they would be different for each system. So how does the community come up with these goals and make sure that they represent the needs of the community and the different stakeholders? We generally advise that a level of service workshop is held to discuss goals and set them with stakeholders. We have developed, this is new, a template agenda to help communities as they navigate planning this workshop. It's brand new, so right now it's just available by request. If you email myself or Katie, we can provide it to you. But we are going to be incorporating it into our asset management handbook and toolkit in the future. The general topics of discussion that we like to see at the workshop are the items shown on this slide. So those are really the categories of the agenda. I do want to highlight a couple of places where I think some additional effort would help a lot of the projects that I've worked with. So these two things are the work in advance of the workshop to set expectations and get attendees thinking before they step into the room, and then additional work to follow up after the workshop is over. If a community is working with a consultant, they can help facilitate the workshop. And one of the steps you need to do in advance of the workshop is prepare yourself and designate responsibilities between a consultant, the community, and attendees. And make sure you know who's doing what before, after, and during the workshop. And who should you include in your workshop? So I've attended a variety of these workshops, and they can be very small or large, but there's a lot of people who really have a stake in your system. So you want to make sure you include those opinions in this workshop. I've listed some ideas on this slide of different categories that you might consider including, but it's really going to vary greatly by your community. So you'll know best whose opinions and voices are heard by the community on the water system, and maybe who you haven't heard from that you should consider including. It's a great opportunity to engage people with your water system that you normally might only hear from if they have a complaint. So this is a really proactive step to take to include them in the workshop. And you might be surprised by who has some good ideas for level of service goals.
So New Hampshire DES promotes the development of smarter goals for level of service. Smarter goals are goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. The acronym also includes the idea that goals should be evaluated routinely, such as annually, and redone or revised as needed. The idea with smarter goals is that your goals should be realistic and reflect what is actually occurring at your system. So if you are developing a goal for water main breaks, think about what you can realistically afford in resources and staff time to prevent breaks. Reviewing past data through your asset management program is a great way to help develop attainable goals. If the public doesn't agree with the goal and wishes to set it higher, is that attainable with current resources or additional resources needed to meet goals? These are some things that you'll consider as you're developing goals. It's important to connect your management of the system with stakeholder needs and expectations when you're developing goals. And these level of service goals can help customers understand what they're paying for and why. Your goals may change based on your stakeholders' needs, emphasizing the importance to continually evaluate and revise your goals. And we recommend developing a vision statement to help focus your approach based on the established mission of your system. Next slide. So Sarah showed this matrix already, but I wanted to bring it back up just to, kind of show you how the smarter goals fit into actually writing out your goals. So just to go through the columns, your goal or objective description should be specific. You'll identify how you will measure the goal. Say like if you're measuring water main breaks, how many? What's your goal? Set an achievable benchmark based on real data hopefully from your asset management program. What is your realistic target for the future? Over what time frame are you going to be measuring the goal? evaluate your success in the past, and then record any corrective measures that may be needed to adjust the goal. Next slide. So now I wanted to move on to how to obtain stakeholder involvement in the development of your level of service goals. Hopefully, if you are setting up a workshop, you have attempted to get the word out about your event and raised a wide variety of stakeholders for different points of view from your customer base. And then with the attendees, think about the best way to encourage discussion and include them in the process. You want to make them feel comfortable enough to share their perspectives, and you want to focus the discussion on the task at hand to avoid discussion on other water or town-related issues that may be on their minds that they're bringing with them. Make sure the attendees know why they are there. Explain the purpose of asset management and what level of service goals can do for them and for the system as a whole. And if you have a workshop that has high attendance, we recommend breaking people out into smaller groups with an activity to come up with their goals for the system. It can be helpful to assign a speaker and a note taker for each group to help prepare the group for reporting out to the larger group at the end of the exercise. And then whoever's facilitating the discussion should be prepared to translate goals and ideas into measurable goals, because I'm sure you'll get a wide variety of responses from different groups. And then for workshops that have low attendance, you don't really need the breakout groups, but more of a focus should be on a group discussion and some questions you could consider to draw out responses from the group, or what do you want to see out of your water system, and how can your water system best serve your needs? And responses to these questions can be translated into more measurable and specific goals. Next slide. So a common question that comes up during asset management projects that we fund through our grants is when to hold the workshop. And in reality, the answer depends on the overall asset management goals of the system and the information you already have for your system. So performing a level of service workshop at the beginning of your project can set the stage and focus your efforts. It's a great opportunity to get stakeholder engagement right at the beginning and let your customers know about the work that is ongoing to develop or improve your asset management program. But having real data can be immensely helpful in developing goals. And if you remember, the smarter goals have to be achievable and realistic. And oftentimes systems may need to evaluate their data to create goals that meet these criteria. So if you're starting your project with good baseline data, it may make sense for you to begin the level of service process early. But the benefits of waiting until more data is collected could mean that you start your level of service workshop with more to share on what is currently being done, and the stakeholders can evaluate if that is meeting their needs. With that said, level of service goal development should not be the last thing you do. The goals you create will have an effect on the criticality scores of assets and ultimately the budgets and the rates. So it does connect into the bigger picture of asset management in that sense.
So once you have held a workshop to set level of service goals, you might be thinking, what do I do now? And this is where it comes back to what I mentioned before. This is a place where I do see sometimes communities struggle a little bit. During the workshop, depending on the group and how many attendees there might be, it's a good idea to set your expectations around what attendees will see following the workshop and when they should expect to hear from you again. At a minimum, providing the matrix of the level of service goals to attendees and making sure their input was captured accurately is a good idea. And it's important to do this in a timely manner to not lose momentum. So I would suggest following up within 2 weeks of a workshop. And if you do need additional feedback following the workshop, make sure you give people a timeline for next steps and when you expect them to get back to you. And taking the time to thank people for their attendance and participation actually does go a long way. So making sure they know that their voices were heard and you appreciate them. And once the workshop is over and you have established your level of service goals, you're not done yet. Think of it as an iterative process, which requires a review of your goals annually and adjustment as needed. I have 3 tips for ongoing tracking of progress towards level of service goals, and they're on the right side of the screen. The first one, don't set it and forget it, meaning you should continually update and adjust your goals and not just leave them untouched. Next, make sure you do assign a responsible person for each goal. And it doesn't mean that person needs to be doing all of the work associated with each goal, but it might mean that they're the person responsible for tracking all the work that's associated with it and championing that goal. My last tip for level of service goals is to tie the goal evaluation to an existing process. For example, many communities face regulatory requirements that have similar annual review processes. For example, CMOM or consumer confidence reports for drinking water or MS4 requirements. They might have an annual report requirement that you're looking at some of these metrics. And there might be some overlap between those items in those annual reports and your level of service goals. It can be efficient to review both of those at the same time. Just note that the level of service goals and the progress towards them are not the same as those regulatory requirements, but they should be really used for your own continuous improvement. So that even if you have a funded project to us, it doesn't mean we're going to be looking over your shoulder on them, but it's really in your best interest to make sure you follow along and adjust those goals as time goes on.
So I wanted to highlight some resources available through DES that can help you as you're developing your level of service. We have a variety of resources on our asset management webpage on the New Hampshire DES website. We have a handbook and toolkit, which is a comprehensive guide to an asset management program and contains a section on level of service. We also provide a template matrix similar to the one that Sarah and I showed earlier, that you can use as a starting point. New to our suite of resources is the template agenda for the level of service meeting, which as of now is available by request, but we're hoping to get it on the website at some point soon. And Sarah had shown you that earlier in this presentation. And then I also want to mention we're trying to update the website and add more training and resources for anyone that's interested in learning more about asset management. So just keep checking the website. We'll have training videos, resources, and events listed. And then conversations can be incredibly helpful with asset management. Sarah and I are available to you as resources. We can assist you with your programs and provide you with examples of level of service from other communities. And also your neighboring communities may have advice to share with you. So you're not alone in this process. And we really wanted to emphasize that point by including 2 guest speakers today who will also be sharing their perspectives on level of service.
Thanks, Katie. So first, we will hear from Brandon Bovair. Brandon is the GIS coordinator and engineering technician with the town of Bedford. Bedford received funding for stormwater and wastewater asset management from New Hampshire DES in 2022. And Brandon will share the town of Bedford's experience with level of service, including some tips and advice for those starting out. So welcome, Brandon.
Hello, everyone. I assume you can hear me. My name is Brandon Bovair, and I serve as the GIS coordinator and engineering technician for the town of Bedford Department of Public Works. I want to start by thanking NHDES for inviting me to share Bedford's experience with developing level of service objectives. Like many municipal staff, my role is broad. I live in both the technical world, GIS, asset tracking and compliance, and the practical world of fieldwork and operations. That means I get to see both the data side and the day-to-day realities. Together, those perspectives give me a unique view on how level of service works in practice. Next slide, please. So, why does level of service matter? At its core, level of service allows an organization to define its goals in a way that is meaningful to both staff and leadership. When done well, it creates a unified mission that connects all levels of the organization. It's also incredibly valuable for credibility. If you can tie a request for staff or equipment to a measurable level of service objective, the conversation with elected officials changes. Instead of saying, we need another piece of equipment, you're saying, we're falling short of this level of service objective, and here's how this equipment helps us meet it. Level of service also improves transparency with residents. They don't necessarily want to hear about regulatory language or technical standards. They want to know how it affects them. Saying, our goal is to resolve stormwater complaints within 3 workdays is clear, measurable, and relatable. And here's something important. Every DPW or utility already has level of service objectives, whether they're written down or not. Documenting level of service simply forces us to put those standards into plain language. And if you can't explain a level of service objective in plain language, it probably isn't a strong objective in the first place. Next slide, please. Now I'll share Bedford's process, our experience with level of service development, and some of the backstory that prepared us for it. Before we received funding for asset management planning, Bedford went through APWA accreditation. That was a major undertaking. It required us to create a mission and vision statement and develop standard operating procedures across the organization. At the time, it felt overwhelming, but in hindsight, it gave us a strong foundation for asset management. Even before that, back during the pandemic, I had some time to experiment, and we developed an in-house work order system to track citizen requests. It was very basic at first, but it gave us data. Over time, we refined it to extract more metrics. Together with accreditation and our mission and vision statement, that data gave us a head start when it came time to formally develop level of service objectives. When we received state funding for asset management, one of the requirements was to hold a level of service workshop. This was a guided process where we discussed what our objectives should be, then refine them further. From there, we organized them into 2 groups, organizational level of service and asset-specific level of service objectives. Now, I'll admit we probably created too many objectives, and many of them started with a baseline of no record, meaning we weren't tracking that metric at all. That wasn't surprising, but it was eye-opening. It showed us exactly where workflows didn't exist yet and where we needed to build processes before we could measure performance. Next slide, please. Here are a few examples of the objectives we developed. For wastewater, we wanted to virtually eliminate odor complaints. 0 wasn't realistic yet, so we set the target at 1 or fewer annually. It's aspirational, but still achievable. For stormwater, we looked at our stormwater-related work orders. At the time, about 30% were closed within 3 workdays. After looking closer and talking with our highway department, we realized the issue wasn't just performance, it was data management. Work was being completed but not always documented properly in the system. We improved the workflow and now we expect compliance to increase. This was a good reminder that in this case, the system was developed before the objective, and if the system isn't comprehensive, the level of service data won't be either. And for catch basins, we set a goal of cleaning and inspecting 400 annually. That number was tied directly with our MS4 permit, specifically the operations and maintenance and data tracking requirements, which made it both regulatory driven and realistic for us to achieve. The takeaway is this: even if your data isn't perfect, use what you have. Setting tangible goals allows you to measure progress and, just as importantly, justify your needs for staff and budget. Next slide, please. Now the good stuff, the lessons we learned along the way. First, we prioritized equipment before level of service objectives. I think that was backwards. It meant we were justifying purchases after the fact instead of letting level of service guide the priorities. We did end up with some great equipment, but our justification would have been much stronger if level of service came first. Second, the team effort faded after the level of service workshop. From that point on, it became too much of an individual effort. Some of that was due to staff turnover, but I'll admit I also should have advocated harder for collaboration. Asset management can't rest on one person's shoulders, not in a municipal setting. Without ongoing engagement, you end up chasing input and buy-in later, and that slows progress. Third, don't fear data gaps. Nobody likes to say we have no record, but ignoring those gaps is a mistake. Documenting them shines a light on blind spots, and that's how you build better systems. And finally, don't stop when the project ends. Level of service is not a one and done exercise. Your first draft will not be your last, nor should it be. As your town evolves, your objectives should evolve too. One last note, if your funding is specific to wastewater and stormwater, like ours was, don't let that box you in. Stormwater is just one part of the right-of-way. The lessons you learn can and should be applied to your other assets, from pavement to traffic signals to signs. Next slide, please. So what are the key takeaways for municipalities? Start small. Pick a handful of metrics you can reliably track. Don't try to measure everything at once. Tie your level of service objectives directly to staff, budgets, and equipment, because those are the levers you'll actually need to move. Make level of service collaborative. Don't let it fall on one person. Treat level of service as a living document. Revisit it regularly, refine it, and let it grow with your community. And above all, build a culture of accountability and continuous improvement. I'll close with a quote from Voltaire. Le mieux est l'ennemi du bien. In English, the best is the enemy of the good. That really sums up how we approach level of service. Don't let the pursuit of perfection hold you back. Start with good, realistic objectives. Use them to guide your work and improve them over time as your community and your data evolve. Remember, level of service already drives everything you do. The only difference is whether you write it down and use it to your advantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for a great presentation. Now we will hear from Sean Osborne, the principal and founder of OSD LLC, a civil engineering consulting firm in Lexington, Massachusetts. Sean has over 30 years of experience developing sustainable and innovative solutions for communities and utilities. Sean earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering at Princeton University and his Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering from UMass Lowell. Sean is a registered professional engineer in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. He serves on the University of Rhode Island Civil and Environmental Engineering Professional Advisory Board and on the American Water Works Association Hydrant Standards Committee and the Standards Committee on Wastewater Collection Systems, O&M. He is a former member of the AWWA Board of Directors and served as the Speaker of the Water Environment Federation House of Delegates. Sean is also a public historian who successfully championed legislation that designates July 8th as Massachusetts Emancipation Day, also known as Clockwalker Day. Sean likes to see utilities using their asset management plan to improve their public education and outreach. Over 15 years ago, he trained small utilities in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts on how to use EPA's CUPS asset management tool, and he worked with the first two utilities in New England to use Utility Cloud, now AMCS Field Services software. Sean, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about level of service. As a consultant working with systems on their water, wastewater, and stormwater asset management plans, the goal is to be the facilitator. And part of that is, as been said before, is to think of this as building capacity. First, you want to build capacity internally, then you want to build capacity with the public, and then you want to circle back with those folks who control your funds, the commissioners or the owner, whoever it is who's in charge of your system, and build that capacity with them. And so the level of service is a great way of communicating the minutia of the asset management plan, which we as consultants and a handful of others think is great and wonderful, want to dive into. But most of the public want to know, what does this mean for us? And that's what the level of service discussions do. Next slide. So when I think about conversations with utilities, it usually comes down to spending time with folks and letting them share all the myriad of responsibilities that they have. Water, sewer, stormwater, these are areas where people keep their heads down, get the work done, go home. They typically don't complain and ask for more, and that's why some assets don't get the attention that they need. So level of service allows us to go back over the basics. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who are the folks who are making you do it? Regulators. Who are the folks who want you to do it better? Customers. What are the other reasons why you do it? Environmental responsibility, right? And so you go through these conversations with, again, those three areas: the people who you work with, the operators, the people who you work for, the customers, and the people who oversee you, the owners, the commissioners. And with all of that, you want to make sure that the level of service conversation ties into the cost of service, which is rates and fees, but it's also what does that mean for you as an operator, if you want to increase the level of service in terms of how many hours in the day do you have? Do you need more people? Do you need more qualified people? Do you need more services from vendors? Do you need different consultants? All of that should be discussed as you go through the preparations and discussions for the level of service workshop. Next slide, please. So the three audiences, again, are the operators, the customers, and the owners. And when you look at communication, you really want to target your audience, communication to your audience. And so that's why some of the level of service goals, which will be internal, will only be important to your operators. Some issues will be important only to customers, and others will be important to commissioners. When I think about the workshop, it's how to get all three of those audiences in the same room working in the same direction. And the first thing you want to do is, again, work with the operators. Next slide. So the internal goals, we talked about that with the previous speakers. And with the internal goals, it's operations and performance, whether it be regulatory requirements or, again, serving the environment or serving your customers. The first thing you want to do is you want to align your services with your assets, right? It's your assets are your people, as well as those nuts and bolts around your collection and distribution systems. And so that allows you to better tell the story once you've aligned your services with your assets. And that story allows you to explain the why and the how. And then once you do that, now you can start looking at what are the metrics that we can set against these services and these assets. And with that definition, you can start to identify where are the gaps, where either we don't have information or we're just not meeting the desired goal. And that goal may be set internally, it may be set externally, it may be a guess that you have. And if, for instance, you set a goal for your fire hydrant maintenance based upon what you think the needs are for the fire department, this is an opportunity while you're still doing the internal goals to pause, bring in the fire department, have that conversation. What do they actually need from you and the water department? Right. So that's one thing to do with in terms of that pre-work that was mentioned earlier by DES, is that you can figure out, is this level of service goal something that others really want, or is it something that we believe that we need to have? So identifying those gaps and then figuring out if those gaps are real or not is important. And then once you've done that, then you want to develop the strategies to address those gaps. And sometimes SOPs, sometimes you can't actually throw money at it. And sometimes it's a hard part. You want to change the way that people behave, either internally or externally. But these are all just part of that first step, which is developing those goals internally. And you want to write those down. You want to make sure that everybody agrees to them, or to the most part, at least understands them, before you go to the next step. Next slide. The next step is to review those goals and to say, did we cover everything before we get to our customers? And one by one, aesthetics, odor control, customer service, which may mean that the admin staff, if your utility has them, need to be brought into the conversation if you miss them. Education. Perhaps you have an outreach person in your office who you forgot to bring in, or your IT folks who do your website, you need to bring them in, or if you have social media people, you need to bring them back in. Maybe you missed them. Energy efficiency. Maybe there's the report that you weren't thinking about that now you want to bring that back in to talk about. Environmental. When you're thinking about people that you want to invite in, perhaps there are some nonprofits in the area that you've worked with or continue to work with that you want to make sure they bring a rep there. Health and safety, if that has been a problem for you, with, say you have a problem with access to some of your manholes because of traffic, perhaps that is something that you want to address that you hadn't thought of before. Social considerations, always hard to have those all locked down beforehand. So that's one that's I see typically overlooked during the internal discussions. Sustainability is something that has been around for centuries. We, as civil engineers, and you as owners and operators, like to have things that are easy to maintain and to operate for as long as possible. So we do think about how you purchase, whether you decide that you're going to standardize on your equipment. Maybe that's something that you need to look at in terms of your level of service goals. You're going to cut down the number of hydrants you allow, or the types of hydrants you allow into your system. And then water efficiency and conservation. This is something that is out in the public, and especially if your source doesn't have the capacity that you would like for development. That's important to mention at the next step when talking to customers. Next slide, please. So you've done the review. You've checked your initial level of service against that list I just went over, and now you are ready to talk to your customers. Your customers, for the most part, are like many people. They're happy that the service works. They're happy that when they get up in the morning and they go brush their teeth, the water runs, and when they take the shower and they flush the toilet, that nothing comes back at them, and that when they go down the road in the rain, that the road isn't flooding. Beyond that, they really don't know what you do and why you do it. So all of that pre-work is so that you can have an idea of how do you discuss what you do and why you do it with the customers in an efficient manner, so that you can have a good discussion on level of service goals. So again, it's the same steps, but now it's with a different audience. You're aligning services and assets. Now you're more thinking about what do they want, what do they care about, what matters to them, the customer. And you define the level of service goals around what they care about still matters to what you need as a utility, but you're making it so that they know that you thought about them, and then that makes them more inclined to give you more input during the workshop. Predetermine where the gaps are, or where you think the gaps are. Again, you are sowing the field, and you'll see which seeds sprout during the workshop. Have some ideas of how you want to address those gaps. Again, is it more people? Is it more training? Is it different vendors? Is it capital projects? And what is it that you can use to address those gaps, so that you can have that discussion, because you don't know what experts are going to be in the room. And as I noticed in one workshop, we did not think that the public would have an appetite to say, yes, we want more operators. But after the discussion, they said, yes, you should put on there in the next 2 years to add more operators, which was great. We just didn't think that was going to be the conclusion. It was the goal, but it wasn't the conclusion. So we told the story in a way that allowed the public to come back to us and say, yes, you need more people, which is a win, because that means that they also understand that more people means a larger O&M budget, which therefore may mean adjustment to the rates, but they understood the need, right? So that's part of why you go through this process, is to allow people to understand what's important to them, and then tell you what they want or willing to either not have, or to add to their needs. So next slide. This is a show and tell, as I see the Level Serve workshop. This is a show and tell for you and yours. The consultant is just the facilitator. So you want to have as many voices from your utility be part of the workshop. Someone talks about the mission, someone talks about the vision, someone else goes over the assets, and it's like elementary school show and tell. And I can do that before the meeting, so that people are comfortable with asking those questions one-on-one, and thus when you start tying level of service to assets, they know what the assets are and what they do. Next slide. So, for instance, drinking water. You show them water service line. If you have that model, perhaps you have a cutout of a fire hydrant that New England Water Works used to have available. You want to show pictures from a recent water main break, and talk about the impacts of the water main break, in terms of cost, in terms of valves that didn't close, how far back you have to go, and then people who are without water and for how long. You can talk about recent power failures. And perhaps you have a need for backup power. People like the story to go along with the assets. Then they have an emotional attachment. Sewer, everybody has, around the country has, 2 or more of these, right? We have fats, oils, and grease, either from individual users, or we have fats, oils, and grease because commercial businesses are not taking care of their oil water separators. So perhaps if you have a fog problem and the issue is the ordinances aren't in place or aren't being maintained, by walking people through that gap, then something that isn't within your purview as a utility, perhaps you are now getting the municipality to step forward and start enforcing those rules and regs. The 3 Ps we've been trying to fight as an industry, the conversation about dispersibles for a few decades now. It's hard to beat Madison Avenue, but we keep trying. Again, just like with drinking water, talk about your sewer breaks, talk about your power failures, the impacts, or the fact that you have a generator that mitigated the impacts of the power failure, and thus you want to have more generators, or you want to maintain those generators, right? You're telling that story so people understand. Again, you're tying the level of service to your assets. Next slide, please. So again, it's a show and tell. This is one of the things that I used recently. People don't know what's happening beneath the ground. I had a well-meaning neighbor say to me when I was clearing out a catch basin in the middle of a storm, because it was starting to back up into my driveway, and the neighbor said, "Oh, is that a sewer problem?" People just don't know. And so as part of the level of service, this is an opportunity for you to help them understand how their system works, from their house to the street, that interface between your responsibilities and their responsibilities, so that they're better citizen, right? So they can make better decisions, so that they are ready to have the conversation during the level of service workshop. Next slide, please. You want to show them, these are the assets that we have. This is where they're located. This is what they do. This is why we either have more than we used to, why we need more, or why the maintenance cost is what it is. But you show them that, you give them the address, and again, now, as part of your prep during the pre-workshop, they're getting a sense of the system and where they live and how it works. Next slide, please. This is you walk them through, you try to deprogram them to starting the process, right? Wipes, clogged pipes, 3 Ps. If you have some examples from your system that you can show them through pictures, or you can share the slide that's out there about toilet paper and versus wipes and dispersibles. Next slide, please. This is a slide that talks about money, right? You want people to understand that their actions, not just the actions of the operator, the actions of the folks in town hall or city hall or DES, but their individual actions have consequences. And so you show them this. You show them, this is what we have to do in order to make sure that we don't get backups, that we don't get sanitary sewer overflows. And there's a cost associated with that. We can continue to do this at this cost to meet these levels of service, or you can help us, the utility, change your neighbors and change the way that you interact with the system. Next slide, please. Fats, oils, and grease. I grew up at a time that you always ran the hot water behind it. It got out of your lateral. Everybody was happy. I didn't understand it now. Right, people don't know. And so you walk them through. This is an opportunity. Again, do not miss an opportunity to educate the folks with the things that are a problem in your system. So fog is typically one of them out there. Next slide, please. And what I've noticed is people forget that fog's a problem. So you have to ask the question when you're talking to your people, when you're talking to the operators, and you don't just say is our fats, oil, and grease a problem. Then you say, well, where is it a problem? What are the pictures that you have? Share those so that people get understanding of where the bottlenecks are in the system, or if it's more prevalent than that. You want people to be more familiar with the system so that they feel more ownership and they understand, oh, that's when they're out there and they're doing that routine maintenance, again, level of service, routine maintenance, that's why we're doing it. And then I threw in something here for II as well. Education, education, education. Next slide. Right. Most of us have seen this either in our systems, in our customer systems, or in other presentations. But many of the people who come to your level of service haven't. So take the time to walk them through what you're trying to mitigate or what has happened in your community that they just don't know about. So whether it is the tuberculation in the pipe, and that's why you want to do cleaning and lining, or why you want to do a replacement program, whether you have the fatbergs, and that's why you want to address fats, oils, and grease, or it's why you have to do, again, more maintenance. That is a cost. And how often you do that maintenance, again, that's level service and cost. And then, of course, your overflows. What does that look like? Where does it happen? And what are you doing to mitigate it? And most people will agree that they don't want that in their neighborhood, in front of their house, or anywhere else. So share and educate. Next slide. So you've gone through, you've educated them, and now you have an opportunity to explain what you're doing and why you're doing in context. The lead service line inventory replacement, the fire hydrant maintenance and water main flushing, water main replacement and rehabilitation, generators. You have a story that goes along, and pictures that goes along with your ongoing or desired O&M and capital projects. And folks can tell you if they agree with A, the project, and B, the prioritization. And sometimes it's just the frequency of what you're doing. Same thing with sewer. And it's tying your story to your assets. It's how I start off this conversation. That is the theme of my presentation. Next slide, please. So you've talked to your operators, you talked to the customers, and now it's time when the rubber hits the road. You have to balance your level of service goals, both internal and external, with the cost. Whether or not the commissioners, the mayor, whoever your regulatory official is going to agree to your rate adjustments to meet the draft level of service goals, right? That's where you start the process all over again. You align your services and your assets, you define the level of service, you identify the gaps, you develop the strategies to address those gaps. And now when you're talking to the third group, the second group, that is the customers, if they have bought in to the level of service goals, then they are there to support you in your conversation with those who agreed to set the rates. And that's important. And so you're building the momentum so that everyone is aligned. And if they're not aligned, you have an opportunity again in the public discussions to change your level of service goals and change your rate changes accordingly. But now your expectations are part of a public conversation, and everybody has aligned the services with the assets. Next slide, please. And then once you've gone through all of that, as was said earlier by DES, is you want to continue the conversation. You want to publicly communicate your level of service plan, whether it be through your CCR, or it's through your what you put in your billing stuffers or what you put on your web page. You want to let people know, okay, we are doing this O&M project, whether it be a culvert and ditch maintenance or flushing program, and that's part. And you tie that to your level of service goals. We're doing these capital projects, more generators, whatever it is, and tie that to your level of service goals. The rate studies, right? If you do an annual or every 3 years, every year, how often you do your rate studies, we've increased the rates by X amount, and this will allow us to continue to do X, Y, and Z, right? Again, you're reminding people of why you're doing what you do. And then your people are a very important asset. And so celebrate when they get new licenses and certification, including becoming a certified culvert maintainer, right? These are the things that you've introduced the ideas to people, but they're going to forget because they, like you, have busy lives. And so you want to remind them of what they learned by communicating the level of service goals on a regular basis through, again, your CCR, your bill stuffers, and perhaps your open houses and your website. Next slide, please. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Sean. That was a great presentation.
So it doesn't look like we got any comment or questions in the chat. If anyone wants to raise their hand for any questions, we can definitely go ahead and answer those now.
And we will take questions for any of the speakers. So if you have questions for DES staff or any of our guest speakers, we're happy to answer them.
Well, we do have one in the chat. It says, Christine Binger says, do you have more example goals for stormwater systems?
Christine, yes, we have a lot of example goals. I could list them now, but I think it's probably more effective if I send you some ideas. So if you're looking for resources like that, you can reach out to myself and we can send you some.
Excellent. And another question is, what form does level of service communication to the public look like? In strategic plan or an annual report?
That's a really good question. I know I'll start by giving some comments and then I'm going to ask Katie to also respond to this question too. But I think what we look for when we fund a project, we do ask that there's a communication plan included, and that can include different kinds of communication. I think for level of service goals, you can put them on a website. You can have, public meetings either recorded and shared, or you can invite the public. I think there's lots of different ways that we've seen communication around level of service goals. It kind of depends on your audience. You have to think about, are you reaching out to customers? Are you reaching out to homeowners? Are you reaching out to, businesses, things like that, and how you want to address those. But there's a variety of different ways that you could communicate, and it's about kind of identifying one, your audience, and then the method that they might prefer to be contacted through. Katie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I don't have too much more to add to that. I think the website is, if you have a website, I think that's a great place to put your goals. Some communities have, um, more like public level service goals that the public understands and relates more to them. And then you might have some goals that are more internal related that, so that's like an approach that I've seen some communities take. But yeah, I think you have to evaluate, how do you normally communicate to your customers and what makes sense for your system.
Awesome. We have another one. As a wastewater treatment facility operator, how do I get myself invited into the conversation? Oh, that's a good question.
That's a really good question. And I want to say, I definitely encourage that perspective being brought into this conversation. It's certainly a valuable one, and there's a lot of input that you can have as an operator of the system. So I think part of it is for communities that are going through the asset management process. A lot of times it's being spearheaded by somebody, it depends on the makeup of the community, but it could be somebody that's maybe not the operator. It's maybe more of a superintendent, or it could be even a town manager or somebody else. So it's making sure that I think on our end, we encourage the invitation to go out to like a broader group and make sure operators are certainly a voice in that. And then I think from your perspective, making sure that you're aware with your management and depending on the makeup of your community and how that looks, just bringing up concerns that you have and places where you see areas for improvement. So opportunities that you have. So if that's, regular staff meetings that you have, or even just conversations with management, I think, we don't want to miss the boots on the ground, the things that they see. So I think it's important to include operators for sure in the discussion.
If I may add, one of the things that I've noticed is that most managers don't want to be the only presenter. So if you are willing to present about some aspect of of treatment during the workshop, that's usually a welcome surprise.
That's a great point, Sean. Being proactive on that front can be helpful. And you're right. I think it's always helpful to have more voices than just one at a level of service workshop.
Does anyone else have any questions? You have some really good ones.
Seems like we might not have any more, but we really appreciate everybody's attendance today. And if you are interested in particular topics again for this series, please reach out to us and look for some follow-up after the workshop with the certificate if you requested it, and then also some follow-up about future topics for the webinar series. But I just want to say a special thank you to our guest speakers today, for Brandon and Sean. It was really great to have your perspective here with us today. And we appreciate you taking the time, as well as our other speakers, to be here and share your thoughts.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.